Thanks, of course, for joining us this Thursday, the 29th of June, actually the last Thursday of the month. I believe you're doing great. Indeed, we have much and more lined up for you this particular Thursday, but today our focus shifts to the discussion that is we'll be talking about the education sector, and to be precise, the capitation. That is, there is some discontent voices among the school's head as far as capitation is concerned. And to help us, of course, dissect this topic, I'll be speaking to Janet Ouko, that is education expert, and Boaz Waruku, policy and strategy advisor, Elemu Bora Working Group. Hang on, that discussion will be coming to you in just a bit. But first thing first, our top stories tonight. Tonight, strengthening bilateral ties. Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua and Germany Martin Schulz hold talks to strengthen Kenya-Germany ties. End of the search. Former Treasury employee Tom Osinde found dead and his decomposed body dumped in River Kuja. Give us more funds. Secondary school heads are proposing an increase in capitation to stay afloat amid raging high cost of living. Also tonight, Nairobi County released 40.7 billion budget for the financial year 2023-2024. Right, my co-pilot tonight is SAMMY, OKELLO, who will be assisting us in the sign language interpretation. My name is AUMA Evans. Remember, we welcome your feedback and contribution to this particular broadcast on all of our social media platforms. Remember, we are live on YouTube, and you can tweet us at KUTVKenya_Kenya and at AUMA Evans. Remember to use the hashtag #PrimeTimeNews. Now, we begin our story here in Nairobi, where Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua today held consultations with the President of Frederick Ebert Stiftung, that is FAS, Mr. Martin Schulz, in a bid to step up bilateral relationship between Kenya and Germany. Gachagua confirmed that Kenya will engage with FAS and other international partners to strengthen and advance its democracy for the good of the country. Among issues discussed are peace and politics as a catalyst to international and regional growth. Joseph Oyomo starts us off tonight with that report.
The government has been keen in fostering good relations with international partners through series of consultations and engagements. Today, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua met German envoy in efforts to strengthen international cooperation for the good of the country.
Accepted here because it's proven mandate.
Gachagua engaged the president of Frederick Ebert Stiftung Foundation FAS, Mr. Martin Schulz, at his official residence in Karen, where they agreed to heighten bilateral relations between Kenya and Germany. Gachagua sought German support in stabilizing peace in Eastern African region, showing concerns over recent attacks suspected to have been executed by Al-Shabaab militants, as well as ongoing wrangles in Sudan and DRC.
As we speak, we have sent our troops to help in DRC Congo to restore normalcy and create an atmosphere for peaceful settlement of the conflict. And as such, we continue to ask your organization, the federal government of Germany and other international friends to continue supporting our peace efforts in this region.
FAS is a non-profit foundation founded by the German government for the advancement of democracy, international cooperation, and solidarity. On his part, FAS President Mr. Martin lauded Kenya for their role in promoting peace in the Eastern Africa region in spite of persistent insecurity problems.
The Republic of Kenya and the European Union is for sure a meaningful step Therefore, we think that your country is in the economic relation with Europe, but also taking into account the very dramatic development worldwide in the situation where we have to defend multilateral solutions as the approach to solve worldwide, to tackle worldwide challenges.
According to Mr. Martin, Germany relies on bilateral relations and Kenya is a reliable partner in Europe's cooperation. The duo also looked into political stability and relations as a factor for development. Gachagua used the platform to pitch UDA party as a party founded on solid and clear ideology of empowering the people through the bottom-up economic transformation agenda.
Empowering people at the bottom of the socio-economic pyramid. The majority of Kenyans, they're lowly, the people who really need our support. So we are building our party on that ideology. And it's a party that we want to grow to be a very serious party for years and years to come. Not just for winning elections and forming government, but to have an ideology. And our ideology is economic. We want to empower the ordinary Kenyans to be self-sufficient.
The Deputy President also acknowledged Friedrich Foundation tremendous contribution to Kenya's transformative agenda, urging their continued support for the government's agenda in promoting democratic values of freedom, social justice, climate change, sustainable development, peace and security. Joseph Oyomo, KUTV.
Right now to corridors of justice. The High Court has today halted the charges leveled against lawyer, surveyor and director accused of Embakasi land fraud worth 1.5 billion shillings linked to Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. The three lawyers, Moses Abonyo Owur, surveyor Bernard Abere Ogechi and Ohas Otieno, I beg your pardon, and the director of Columbus 2000 Limited moved to a higher court to stop their prosecution through their lawyer and the Law Society of Kenya. Well, I'm afraid I have sad news for you. The search for the former Treasurer employee Tom Osinde ended today after he was found dead and his body dumped in River Kuja. Osinde went missing 2 weeks ago while traveling from his Nakuru home to Borabu in Kisii. According to police, Osinde's body was found in River Kuja in Migori on 22nd and has been lying in mortuary. The body was later identified by the family and two suspects who had been arrested on June 27th. The two suspects, who are casual laborers at the home of the deceased, are now under investigation over the abduction. The race to fill the vacancy in the office of the Director of Public Prosecution is on. Some legal minds are already eyeing the seat left behind by the Noordin Haji upon his appointment as the new Director General of the National Intelligence Service. Our very own Lynette Maina reports on a day a 7-member committee appointed by President William Ruto on 21st of June 2023 kick off their process of identifying suitable nominees to fill the void left by Haji.
The Director of Public Prosecution seat continues to attract applicants. The seat fell vacant after former DPP Nordin Haji was sworn in as the new Director General of the National Intelligence Service on June 14, 2023. The applicants include criminal lawyer Cliff Ombeta, who is currently representing Pastor Ezekiel Odero of the New Life Church, Danstan Omari, a high-profile lawyer who has represented former Chief Justice David Maraga, Kioko Kilukumi, a renowned criminal lawyer who has represented President Ruto in Supreme Court, with others still applying. The deadline for applications is on Wednesday, 12th July 2023. The law states that a candidate must hold a law degree from a recognized university or be an advocate of the High Court of Kenya or possess an equivalent qualifications from a common law jurisdiction, have at least 10 years experience as a superior court judge or professionally qualified magistrate, or have at least 10 years experience as a distinguished academic or legal practitioner or such experience in other relevant legal field, be of high moral character, integrity, and impartiality, demonstrate a high degree of professional competence, communication skills, fairness, good temperament, good judgment in both legal and life experiences, and commitment to public and community service. A 7-member panel appointed by the President on 21st June 2023 has started the process of identifying suitable nominees for the appointment of the next Director of Public Prosecution, which is currently being held in an acting capacity by Ms. Dorcas Oduor, who was Mr. Haji's deputy. Lynette Maina, KUTV.
Well, thank you, Lynette, for that comprehensive reporting. Now, a meeting to resolve the dispute between Inspector General of Police Japheth Kome and the National Police Service Commission has been held today. The meeting aimed to resolve the conflict that started after Kome promoted 514 police officers on 5th June. The chairman of the National Police Service Commission, Eliud Kinuthia, opposed the action, saying it was against the law since the Inspector General did not follow the proper procedure and has no constitutional mandate to promote police officers. Now, Nairobi County, that is Chief Executive Commissioners for the Finance, Charles Kerich, has presented to the County Assembly Nairobi's estimates for the financial year 2023-2024. Health and nutrition has taken up the lion's shares of the 8 billion out of 40.7 billion budget, with 1 billion being earmarked for the Sakaja school feeding plan for the for the public schools. I beg your pardon. Other counties have also read their budget amid member of County Assembly go slow as they demand an upward revision of their pay.
The pronouncement of the budget policy highlights and revenue raising measures.
In Governor Johnson Sakaja's inaugural budget, the City County Assembly has today witnessed the presentation of a record 40.7 billion budget for the financial year 2023-2024. In the budget statement read by the city's finance EC Charles Kerich, the Department of Health is the biggest winner, receiving an allotment of 8.1 billion shillings. Sakaja's much popularized school feeding program has been awarded 1 billion, a program set to benefit over 250,000 school-going children in Nairobi.
Mr. Speaker, it is indeed a great privilege to present to this Honorable Assembly, the people of Nairobi and Kenyans at large, the budget highlights and revenue-raising measures for the financial year 2023-2024. This is in fulfillment of the provisions of Section 132(1) of the Public Finance Management Act 2012 and premised on Article 201 of the Constitution of Kenya.
A host of other counties have delivered their budget estimates for the year, among them Kirinyaga, Nyeri, Kisii, and Uasin Gishu counties. Kisii County has prepared a 13.8 billion budget, with Uasin Gishu Governor Jonathan B. overseeing a 9.8 billion for his maiden budget. Nyeri County approved an 8.1 billion budget, with Kirinyaga County Assembly passing a Kenya shilling 7.2 billion budget yesterday.
And I urge the members of this county assembly to support the same budget because it is good. It has catered for the needs of the people of Kirinyaga, as well as the promises that they went round, the elected members went round promising their constituents. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I support and I second.
The presentation of county budgets across the country happens against a backdrop of a payroll, pitting MCAs against the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. That notwithstanding, MCAs in Kirinyaga County availed themselves for the budget reading session, affirming that their commitment to the people's service beats their personal needs.
Honorable members, we celebrate our first budget. We need to do it wholeheartedly, and now we start rolling our sleeves so that we are able to implement programs and projects that we have factored in this year's financial budget. Thank you, honorable members, and I support.
In the financial year 2023-2024, the National Treasury has allocated a total of 385 billion shillings to the county's kitty, monies that are eagerly anticipated in the counties to sustain operations. Munene Weru, KUTV, Nairobi.
Right, thanks Munene Weru for that. The National Treasury has set monthly cash limit to government ministries, departments and agencies with an aim of dealing with the wastage of public funds amid tight budget. Treasury Cabinet Secretary Professor Njuguna Ndung'u has instructed accounting officers to seek written confirmation of the availability of funds from the National Treasury before recruitment of new staffs, replacement or promotion of staffs in different government departments. Let's get more from our very own Zena Odhiambo.
In the cash planning and settling of cash limits to the ministries, departments and agencies, the National Treasury formed a quarterly disbursement of funds formula to reduce wastage of public funds. According to Treasury CS Njuguna Ndung'u, the move is aimed to ensuring predictable execution of the budget and proper delivery of services and public investments. According to the Treasury, the new disbursement plans give priority to 4 categories of expenditures, including statutory obligations, major social economic accountability, governance and security programs, other government-financed expenditure, and externally funded projects categorized as revenues. Restrictions has also been extended to personnel expenditure on hiring, promotions to higher ranks, and bargaining agreements with trade unions that have cost implications. Speaking to the MDS, the Cabinet Secretary said accounting officers should note that recruitment of new staffs, replacement, upgrading or promoting of staff should only take place after MDS has obtained written confirmation of availability of fundings from the National Treasury and necessary approval from the relevant entities in the public service mandated to undertake recruitment. In a further move aimed at streamlining expenditure, the Treasury banned commitments for supply of goods and services without prior approval tied to available funds, with Njuguna Ndung'u issuing a disciplinary action against any public officer who commits financial delinquencies to seal his obligations. Zena Odhiambo, KUTV.
Right, it is 22 minutes past the time. Of course, time to take a short break here on KUTV Primetime News. Remember, when we come back, we'll be diving you direct into our top discussion tonight, where we are talking about the school capitation. Remember, my guest is Janet Ouko, that is education expert, and Boaz Waruku, policy and strategy advisor, Elimu Bora Working Group. Don't go too far.
Technology, science, innovation, ICT and research. These are the ingredients upon which the solutions to the 21st century problems are founded. In a world that is rapidly changing, it's all hands on deck to ensure a balance in all fields of life. Women, young and old, are also in the front line, breaking the glass ceiling, becoming thought leaders in the larger tech space. Not forgetting other societies marginalized. And when the tech Avengers come together, we inch closer to a much safer, efficient, and sustainable world. What we view as a norm in today's advanced world was just an idea, and for nostalgic reasons, we trace back to the iconic days to bring you the retro tech. On Tech Innovation Show, we encapsulate all the pillars of the fourth industrial revolution, decoded in a language, all for one for all. Every Monday at 8:30 as we push the mantra, keep learning something new each and every day. Only on KUTV, a new experience.
Kipindi hewani ni mitindo ya kipwani. Kama ilivyo kipindi hiki kinahusu nyimbo za taarab, chakacha, midwara, midundiko, bila kusahau mapishi. Ambao ndio uti wa mgongo wa pwani ya Afrika Mashariki.
Jamani swahibu zangu mliopo maskani, hatuonani wenzangu, najua mwanitamani.
Hapa KUTV, nahodha mwendesha chombo cha baharini, yani ua linalunukia na kuvutia waridi tamu.
What are some of the ways through which you can develop these skills so that you are comfortably fitting into the job?
You have to put yourself in positions where you are uncomfortable in the sense that you are not clear about what to do.
Because I used to work a corporate job before. So when I left, I happened to visit someone's farm around this area.
So this project is called Security Breach Detector 100 Canister Familiarize. It is meant to be used to detect, detonate explosives.
We'll tackle all the tough issues, discuss all the weird moments, and hopefully share a few laughs along the way.
Baada ya kutafuta kazi, tunaweza kuanzisha miradi yetu ambayo ingetusaidia kubadilisha maisha ya wazazi wetu.
Kwa vijana wenzangu, wengi hawana kazi, lakini ikiwa sisi wenyewe tutajiamini, tunaweza kujiajiri wenyewe.
Afrika kwa kweli tuna mahitaji ambayo ukiyasuluhisha unaweza kuathiri watu kwenye bara hili
bila woga. Watu huwa na uzalishaji zaidi, wanajawa na ujasiri, wanakuwa wabunifu na wanakuwa wenye maarifa.
Niliamua kuacha kazi, hata kama sitafanikiwa, nitakuwa nimejaribu, nitakuwa najua haiwezekani.
Hakuna kitu cha ajabu hapa. Kila anayepata ufanisi hufanya kazi usiku na mchana.
Kitu kitakusukuma na kuwezesha kupata maarifa ambayo hukuwa nayo.
Tunajaribu kutengeneza kitu kitakachopita mipaka ya nchi hii.
Ikiwa unataka kubadilisha ulimwengu, anza na nyumbani.
Right, now, welcome back. The secondary school heads are proposing an increase of capitation from the current 22,244 shillings to 30,000 per student to match the rate of inflation and the current cost of living. The principals are at the same time expressing concern over government failure to fully disperse the fund for 2 years in a row. The issues that were raised at the ongoing Kenya Secondary Schools Head Association annual conference in Mombasa, and as our very own Yvonne Kemuma reports, Teachers Service Commission is on track to employ some 25,000 teachers.
As the 46th Kenya Secondary School Heads Association Conference in Mombasa continues, school heads are asking the government to increase the capitation allocated to every student annually from 22,244 to 30,000 shillings as the cost of commodities continues to soar. This comes as the school heads lamented over the government's failure to disperse 100% of the funds intended for schools, with the capitation balance dating back to the 2021-2022 financial year. According to the chairperson of the Kenya Secondary School Heads Association, this situation complicates activities in the running of schools as the cost of living continues to soar. Annually, the government is supposed to allocate 22,244 shillings per student, but for 2 years in a row, only 17,000 shillings has been allocated, resulting in a deficit of about 5,000 shillings per student. The government is also set to recruit more teachers, with the hiring process expected to commence in July. This comes after the Teachers Service Commission received the highest portion in the education docket budget. According to the 2023-2024 budget, TSC was allocated 316.7 billion, which accounts for half of the total amount of 628.6 billion designated for the education sector. Additionally, the commission was allocated 4.8 billion for the purpose of recruiting 20,000 intern teachers. The ministry is expected to advertise for teachers' recruitment in the coming week. The ministry is also expected to implement new approaches in the distributing of school capitation funds beginning next year. This was announced during the inaugural ceremony graced by the Education CS, Ezekiel Machogu. Machogu specified that the allocation of the funds will follow a proportional distribution of 50% for the first term, 30% for the second term, and 20% for the third term. Yvonne Kimuma, KU TV.
Right, that story by Yvonne Kimuma sets the pace and the stage for a discussion tonight where we talk about matters with, education capitation. And to even set this stage even further, primary and secondary schools stare at crisis due to inadequate funding to sustain their operation. Secondary schools heads are now voicing their concern and that some core activities in the school's calendar are now bound to adversely affected by the delays in the release of full capitation fund by the government. And now joining me in the discussion, rather in this conversation, is Boaz Waruku, Policy and Strategy Advisor, Elimu Bora Working Group, and also will be joining me later on as soon as of course, she gets in, we'll drop her into the discussion. That is Janet Ouko, education expert. Well, thank you so much, of course, for making time to speak to KUTV. Well,
thank you, Evans.
The whole issue of school capitation, to some extent, many might say it's really disturbing and quite disappointing. But this begs the question, how did you even get here in the first place?
Thank you very much, Evans. One, we are in a situation in this country currently where what should have been prioritized and put at the forefront in terms of financing or allocating resources and transmitting is not being looked at as a priority.
Okay.
That is education. But if you do remember, let me take you back. You realize that education agenda did make Kenyans to come out so much during the campaigns. And indeed, they were saying we need something to be fixed. Mm-hmm. Among the things they wanted fixed were the lapses that now we are still seeing continuing. One is the financing. The details of others, including the curriculum itself and all that, I don't want to get into, but because the focus you're saying is on the capitation. There are many problems inherent in our capitation of the schools and, say, education institutions. One is that the amount that we are even now struggling to see that we put them together and transmit have not been professionally costed and arrived at. Why do I say so? Because you see obvious signs of confusion in a way. I'll give you the example of having our children within the basic education cycle. That the basic education, it includes the 2 years of pre-primary, the primary, and then the secondary. At the pre-primary, that information has not even been made uniform because that is a mandate that has been given to the county governments. You won't tell what county is transmitting how much money per child. But come to the primary school, the Universal Primary Education Fund is actually supposed to be a fund that's supposed to be allocated and transmitted to the schools. How much is that? It's a paltry 1,400 per year. And that was decided many years ago. And right now, when the inflation has really gone high, we are still stuck with that. If you ask how was it costed, how did they arrive at that, it's still a problem. But even that little amount that had been earmarked is still a problem to get and transmit or transfer to the schools, because that is where it's the most important. Then you come to the CBC, there's a junior secondary school. The students there, out of the blues, you're being told that each student is allocated how much? 15,000 annually. That is a junior secondary school which has been domiciled in a primary school where there's no laboratory, where there's no workshop, where there's completely nothing. Meaning that the requirements there are so much, and yet there's 15,000 allocated per student. Come to the secondary school, you find a student is allocated 22,245 there. And this is in a secondary school or a high school which has been well established. The labs are there. I mean, you're only required to buy chemicals and things like that. And yet, the allocation, you're seeing that it's a marked difference from the junior secondary school. Junior secondary school is a secondary school. If what CBC purveyors, what they sold to us is that is a secondary school. So I started from there because I want to tell you the arbitrariness with which first we just allocate resources. And that arbitrariness is like the cancer which is also in this Ministry of Education. Why? Because even when things are supposed to be structured, planned well, streamlined, so that then we get to know in a predictable manner, like when the president did appoint the Presidential Working Party, that should have been giving us indication of what are the Kenyans saying, what have they recommended and suggested, that even before those reports could be made available, we are seeing implementation of things which are arriving or being arrived at like in a pedestrian way, like roadside declaration. So there are lots of things.
And we will talk about know, the failures and the steps that could have been taken to actually bring the train back on its feet. And I want us to take a look at the allocation as far as the Ministry of Education is concerned. And actually they received the lion's share of this budget, over 600 billion. That is quite big enough. And if you can break it down, I don't know if my director has that figures so that we can take it down to you. Like we can see the likes of TVET. TVET were given 28.2 billion. Youth training and development, that is 55.6 million. Then we have higher education and research, that is 128.6 billion. University education, 127.4 billion. Then we have primary education, 32.3 billion. Secondary education, that is 103 billion. We have teachers resource, that is Teachers Service Commission, that just to deal with the recruiting teachers to meet the demand of teacher-learner ratio, that is 314.9 billion. Actually, the lion's share as far as distribution of this particular fund is concerned. Then we have basic education, 147.8 billion. When you look at this allocation, and I want us to focus on primary education and secondary education, does it, some sort of spark confidence in you? Do you think now this could be the roadmap now to at least now returning to normalcy?
Thank you, Evans. If these figures were arrived at scientifically, I would be persuaded to think the same. You started by indicating that education has received the lion's share. Yes, education has been receiving the lion's share for so many years. Why? Because education is the largest department that we have.
Okay.
So the ministry that has been put together under education is where almost everywhere and in every place you'll find that ministry being felt there. Right from the villages where there are schools with teachers there and all that. It is all over. The materials that are required, the books and all that, it is all over. So to the extent that I would say anybody who thought that there could be a ministry that would receive higher, then that is a mistaken person. So let's not start from by saying that education has been given the largest share. You're supposed to make resources follow functions which are provided for.
Okay.
You're supposed to actually dissect into minute details the components that then you can say for each of these components, how do you cost it? That is where I was starting from. And I was trying to show how instead we've been arbitrary.
Okay.
In fact, all of a sudden we've been arbitrary that anybody can just emerge with anything and tell you this is where we are going. So I was trying to pin it down and say, I would have been comfortable if the Presidential Working Party had produced a report which is well analyzed and indicating on what really are the key requirements we need to invest in there, which probably would even make us want to look at it in a better way. For example, this budget, look at the allocation given to the TSC to recruit teachers and ensure that those teachers get to the schools, retooled and all that, because of a new system. As we speak now, the first batch that was done for this recruitment was 30,000, and then there was some 5,000 additional of those who had qualified but were still teaching in primary school. They were given a chance to get to the JSS. With that number, 35,000, there's no JSS that has more than 2 teachers. All those junior secondary schools, they have 1 or 2 teachers maximum. Some of those schools have multiple streams. So, and each, the JSS grade 7, just to be simple, grade 7, they have how many learning areas? 14. They are trained. In fact, KU is actually the citadel of teacher development. And here you'd be told that they are trained on 2 subjects. The subject matter is 2. If they have a third one, that is just a support. But the core subjects which they are taught to teach, or they're trained to teach, are 2. So when you have one teacher with, say, 3-streamed grade 7, and each of those classes, they're supposed to teach 14 teaching areas. Are you saying that we are having quality? We are having a problem. So that's why, for me, let us be more realistic in the way we plan. And planning here in its wholesomeness, including financial planning, that is the budgeting process. So that by now we would have been saying, other departments and other sectors, please don't cry so much. We have to fix education first. As a Limubora working group, we are actually saying that there's a way in which we've been attempting to reform education right from 1964. You've seen so many of those, the Ominde commissions, the Gastati commissions. We had Professor Douglas Odhiambo, and right now we are also having the Munavu task force. Many of those commissions, if you look at them, one thing they've been missing is the financing component. Look at the 844, the way they introduced a very practical kind of system with a curriculum that would allow students really to be practically oriented, but also stimulating to the mind. But with time, they started easing out and removing components like the art and craft, the music, and all that. They removed them completely. Why? Not because they didn't like them, but it's because the costing was not done.
Okay.
And so when the teachers were supposed to deliver them, they could not. They didn't have the material. It's because we did not look at the costing. The financing component is key in any reform process. As a Limu Bora working group, we took time to analyze what are the issues that have really been bogging us down. Every time we attempt to reform the education, we still come back to the same situation. 844 fell back until it became what now is known as the more theoretical, exam-oriented, and all that, you see? CBC would go the same way. Because the way you've heard how the parents have been crying, because what has happened is that the government is running away from its core responsibility to provide basic education. It's doing so by transferring that responsibility to the parents. When it does so, then the parents themselves are already overwhelmed. The kind of weight that a parent is shouldering. I'm not saying that they shouldn't provide uniform, for example. And in any case, who said that uniform is the only way that children could learn? Because there's a way in which you can also identify the students. So one thing I would be saying is that let the government become more realistic in terms of costing. And once costed and once agreed, for example, that this amount of resources that would be transferred to the schools, they are to be transferred on time. Actually, they should be transferred before any term begins. When they do so, it means that the management of the school, the teachers and the head teachers, they will plan very well.
Okay. Hold on to that thought of, how to transfer funds and all that. But you have spoken to my curiosity. You talked about, it's like we are making, progress, 1 foot forward, 2 steps backward.
Yes.
And according to you, as a Limu board, of course, you have been on the ground. You have assessed the situation the way it is, and probably you have some solution.
We have actually developed a framework which we are calling irreducible minimums on the principles and the standards which must be adhered to in education for it to be realistic. We launched that last month on 28th of May in Nairobi.
Okay.
Yes.
I want you to talk to us about how you think those solutions could actually be a game changer as far as education sector is concerned, and of course the capitation, and how best, even the stakeholders, those who are concerned with the, policy formulating, can actually borrow something from you or even a leaf from your side and actually push this agenda.
I'll take the angle that you'd given on the financing and the grant, the capitation grant making. In our analysis and understanding, knowing that every administration comes on board and their priorities could even change, we said there must be an establishment of a national education fund. Within that fund, and this is an education fund which should be a charge of the consolidated fund, meaning it is part of the annual tax, that is tax revenue that is collected. We've given the example of how it happens in Nigeria. They have an Uzbek, a Universal Basic Education Fund. It is run by a commission. It is a fund where every year, in their case, it is 2.5%. Every year, that amount generated from tax, that percentage is hived off and put into that fund. And it has no recall back. The moment it goes in there, it must remain there. And other sources are also encouraged, and resources are brought in there. From that fund, what does it do? That fund ensures that all the infrastructure in the schools countrywide, wherever they are, For them, they do it by matching grants with the states, because Nigeria being a federal state, you see, they match the fund so that it becomes easier and quicker to build infrastructure, build new schools, build even laboratories. In our country, the idea of even building classrooms and all that had been abandoned and left to the school management and the parents and all that, until Uhuru's administration through Magoa rushed through that last stretch when they were constructing some CBC classrooms in secondary school, which also became misplaced, because then this CBC JSS got domiciled in primary school. So we're saying a national education fund that has properly that has been structured properly with that mandate to do, I'm talking of infrastructure development, continuous professional development of teachers, getting resources for that kind of work, working very closely with the Teacher Service Commission, and indeed ensuring that teachers are also being absorbed sufficient and adequate to deliver on the curriculum that is there. And the key component also of this fund are the ones that would help in the research component. Why? Because through research is where we get innovative ideas. This is where we actually can get ideas to incubate and even become the industrial world of the decades, just the next decades, which are just ahead of us here. So we are saying such a fund is very, very important for us to be done. And two, we also diagnosed and realized that there's multiplicity of policies all over. If you're asking for a national education policy, you'll not find it in one place. We are saying that it's the right time for Kenya to evolve a comprehensive national education policy, which clearly also articulates our philosophy of education.
Fair enough. Well, now let's face the elephant in the room. Now, the school head, that is secondary school head, in their conference that was held in Mombasa, one of the key things they are advocating for the additional, increase of capitation from 22 to 30. And according to them, they say the government, yes, has released fund 24 billion out of, they were promised 28, but they received 24. But out of this 24, they are saying that it has been used to service debts and even, to pay the recurrent expenditure. And now they are saying there is no money to run, the institution. What do you foresee? What is the problem here? In as much as, we talk about the policy and the government, allocating a lion's share of budget to education sector. I remember in the last financial year, the government allocated to the tune of almost over 500 billion. That is quite a huge sum of money. But why are we struggling?
We're struggling because it is still a peanut. For as long as it is not been scientifically derived, it will still be a drop in the ocean. Why? Take the example of this capitation being transmitted or transferred to the schools. That grant is what is supposed to be used by the schools to buy foodstuffs and all that for the students, isn't it? But look at how the cost of bags of maize, bags of beans, and all the ingredients, all the materials they require to make that meal, they are almost doubled. When they are doubling, the government first is delaying on remitting even that small amount, and two, when they are remitting, of course, they are bringing it so late that you're told that in the entire term, actually the amount that was being remitted last week is the amount that was to top up and clear the arrears of term 1, so that they start now even the term 2. When that happens and the amount is inadequate, the suppliers of the schools are in dire stress. In fact, many of them, because they are the local business people, their businesses are also crumbling. Why? Because they do not have money even to go buy a new supply so that they can supply the schools. So we still have a lot of problem. And the government continuing to promise I think the Ministry of Education has been so used to saying the funds will arrive this Friday, and tomorrow is Friday. They really love Friday, or next week. And next week doesn't come. I think they need to plan very well and give education the priority it deserves. In addition, they also require to just revisit this amount. Why am I saying so? Because I've just told you. I mean, a bag of maize, that's a 90-kilogram bag. They were actually costing this when it was costing about 4,000 shillings maximum. Right now it is 7,000.
All right.
7,000, 8,000, almost double.
Okay.
So it means that this amount becomes so insufficient. And if you want to see, why do you think the students were sent home early this time?
Okay, I was coming to.
Why do you think they
that.
were sent home early? It's because the teachers do not have the resources to run this.
All right.
Yeah.
Even because of we are running, out of time. But I want you to actually match this point. We have seen some sort of defiant nature from school heads. The ministry is clear. Don't increase school fees. Don't. The midterm that was, most head teachers actually they had to send learners very early, contrary to what the Ministry of Education had actually advised. What are you reading? Are you seeing a Ministry of Education that is toothless? Yet this is, an institution that is supposed to actually, regulate the operation and, of course, how the framework of the learning institution actually are guided and operate.
The head teachers have got a point, and that is why they may stand up and tell the Education Cabinet Secretary that you live in Rome, you are not a Kenyan, you don't live here, you don't understand us. Because if the minister is still not getting the message they are sending, they are saying the cost of skyrocketed.
Okay.
By them talking of we want the increase in the allocation. This is for the allocation per child that the ministry gives from 22,245. They want it to go to 30,000. I think that would be that looks fairly reasonable from the ministry. This is not the fee that is to come from the parents.
Okay.
But let me get to the foundations of what we are talking about, even within our own irreducible minimums and foundations. We are saying education first is a basic right.
Okay.
Why? Because we are simply restating what is a fact in our Constitution, Article 43, the children's right, also Article 53. It is unequivocally provided for that education is a basic right. That basic education is a fundamental right that must be given in a compulsory nature and free of charge to the children. That is from primary, pre-primary up to the higher education, up to Form 4. And it's actually providing also that progressively we should be aiming at even making higher education free, university education free. So our clarion call and our foundational thing, we actually say that basic education once and for all should first even be free and compulsory, so that we should not have even discussing the issues of the fees and all that.
Well,
the government should provide. That is an obligation they have. They have signed so many instruments, by the way.
Thank you.
That declares that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we are actually out of time, and I'm afraid this is where we'll, leave it as it is right now. And of course, thank you so much for making time. That was, Boaz. So up from this, we go direct straight to sports news. Well, now it's time to get the latest in the world of sports. Kenya professional boxers are expected to battle it out at the Boxing Olympics trials in Nairobi for a chance to represent the nation in the 2024 Paris Olympic Games. Our sports reporter Hassan Yusuf has this story and much more on our subsequent sports wrap.
Boxing Olympic trials are set to kick off today at the Charter Hall in Nairobi. The 3-day trial competition organized by the Boxing Federation of Kenya will involve pugilists from 7 weight categories for male boxers and 6 weight categories for female boxers. Nairobi City Marathon second edition is set for Sunday the 2nd of July, with over 9,000 athletes expected to compete in the 42, 21, 10 and 6 kilometer races. The City Marathon races has attracted 66 world-class athletes, with the latest enlisters being Edwin Kiptor and Ethiopian Haile Mekon. The second edition marathon will award the top 20 in the 42-kilometer marathon, with the winners taking home 3.5 million Kenya shillings, all the way to the 20th athlete bagging 30,000. The Kenya Rugby Series makes its return this weekend with the Dallas Sevens that will be held at the Jomo Kenyatta International Stadium in Kisumu from 1st to 2nd of July 2023. The 2022 National Sevens Circuit winners Menengai Oilers will be eyeing to defend their series title, but will face fierce competition in the Dallas Sevens Series from the 3-time circuit champions Homeboys, the Kakamega 7 champions Cabras Sugar, and the recent Embu Sevens champions Strathmore Leao. Journalists will have their fun on Saturday at the Garelia Arena in Nairobi at the Sports Journalist Association of Kenya Football Tournament, which has attracted 16 teams from the Kenyan media outlets. The winners will take home a 50,000 prize fund, with the runners-up cashing in 30,000, while that place will bag 20,000. Hassan Yusuf, KUTV.
Right, that's a wrap up from us here, and of course we thank you so much for making time, and of course giving us a company for the last 58 minutes or so. Of course, my name is AUMA Evans, and our sign language interpreter tonight has been SAMMY OKELLO. Until next time, it's a good night and bye bye for now.